I'm thinking of a situation I had with a friend who, and I don't remember this being in the book, so this will be a tough one. They go silent on you. In other words, the conversation is going a particular way, and I don't know, maybe it's me. I do start to win, and maybe they can feel it, like, and they just get quiet, and I'm like, "Are you still there? Hello? Is there something you would say to re-engage somebody who's given you the silent treatment or gone cold on you, or every time a conversation gets to a certain point, they just disengage completely?" Or is your suggestion, don't let it get to that point by using some of these tactics and strategies? But is there a way when they disengage and go quiet that you can bring them back in?
Yeah, here's where you go wrong is when somebody's giving you that silent treatment, there's this temptation that we start to say ugly things. Like in romantic relationships, you'll start to kind of say hurtful things in hopes that they bite back because all you're wanting is just to feel like you're not alone. So you're wanting that engagement. That happens sometimes in toxic relationships. Now, there are techniques that we can use to not get to that point. But let's say you're already there. Let's say you're already they're distance from you. There's nothing you're going to be able to say, nothing you can do physically to just grab that person and say, come back to the conversation. Highlights the importance of not letting it get to that point.
Sure.
But what I would recommend is if somebody is giving that distance, you give them that distance. So maybe it's a day, maybe it's 2 days, because what it's highlighting for you is that you're wanting the conversation just to hear yourself. You have not been in the conversation to hear the other person. And when they are taking the time, sometimes that is needed. Sometimes there's wisdom in that of taking the time to think and disengage and give it a break. And if you need to, then what I would say is you message that person, you leave a voicemail for that person if they don't respond to your call and say, hey, I feel like we're miles away. It's important to use distances. I like using distances in conversation. So you feel a mile away from me right now, or I feel like we're 50 yards apart. Whenever you use distances, it's a great way of saying, hey, of saying you can feel that we're off instead of saying, hey, what's wrong with you? Or, hey, you seem off, or you, what's going on? What's wrong?
Mm.
When you can use distances of, um, I feel like you're far away from me right now. At least I do that even in, my life is a great way of not getting them defensive. But you call them, say, "Hey, I feel like we're far away. I'd really like to get closer. I wanna find a way that we can talk again," or, "Hey, just letting you know I'm here, wanting to talk to you. Hope to hear from you soon." Any way that you just say, "I'm not trying to pressure this at all," because you need to give them that space to continue to think about it. Or you can also say, "Hey, I think it was smart of you to give this conversation some space. You're right. I needed that, and
Mhm.
we'll love to touch base with you soon." So you're giving them credit for their choice. So when you're saying, almost like a, "Hey, good job. Thank you for trying to get us back on track," they will
Mhm.
take that and go, "Okay, yeah, that was my intentional choice to help us," rather than you saying, "Hey, you know what? You're not talking to me. If you don't want to talk to me, that's fine." That kind of stuff is going to further pull them apart.
So good, Jefferson. When I'm in a conversation that I feel like um, it's getting away from me. Let's say that. That could be a sales negotiation. It could be a conversation with a friend, you name it. Um, I feel like in my case, most of the time, it's speeding up faster than I want it to. You talk about this in rule one, number six is control the pace. And as I listen to you, I mean, you're very cognizant even of your pace and the way that you communicate, even on the show today and even in your content. You do. You're actually a little faster when you do the content from your car than you are right now on the show. You're even a pace slower today than you are in your car. So I watch that like tonality and pacing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that in a conversation because when emotions run high, oftentimes for me, I feel like the conversation is speeding up where my intellect is now not quite as sharp as my emotions are running, if that makes any sense. So, what are strategies to control the pace, and what does that even mean?
Yeah. I love that you picked up on that.
Mm,
The anytime you are getting that fight or flight, and I know all of your listeners, highly educated, they know fight or flight.
mhm,
Whenever you're getting emotionally flooded like that, it is That's why you're having trouble finding your thoughts and connecting things, and that's why the quicker you get, maybe you've felt it where you're either nervous, same thing when you're really mad, you might stammer, and you might go like, "No, no, no, that's not," and you're having trouble getting words out. It's because you're just flooded. Your emotions are there, your logical and analytical side is not. And so what I teach every one of my clients before they go cross-examination, and I'm just offering them up to the wolves, is a constant reminder of you control the pace, not them. That means no matter how fast somebody is peppering you with questions, the conversation cannot happen any faster than you respond. So whenever they ask you a question and you give a rapid fire answer back, or worse, you start to step over their question because you already see where it's going, bad things happen. You say things you don't mean, you say things that are not fully thought out. That's why even in romantic relationships, all of a sudden you blurt something out and you go, "Oh, oh man, that's not what I mean." And you already knew as soon as it came out of your mouth, you put your foot in your mouth and you messed up. It's because you weren't controlling the pace. That means you need to slow down your words and that you need to leave space between what they said and how you're going and when you're going to respond. There's a difference if you were to ask me if you said, "Hey Jefferson, how was your day?" And I said, "Good. It was real good. I mean, it was really good. Thanks." Versus, "Hey Jefferson, how's your day?" And I said, "It was good. It was a good day." Like, you can just hear the difference in which one listened to the question, which one thought about the answer, which one makes the other person feel acknowledged or heard. Same thing with that's why rule number 1 is, say, with control. If you go down and let's say you're at work and all of a sudden you go, "What's wrong? What happened? What's going on?" And all you're sensing and telling the other person is you're grasping for control versus you come in, take a breath, and then you're saying, "All right, what happened? Give it to me." Like, people are looking, like we said, for those emotional anchors. So what I teach is let your breath be the first word that you say. That's how you set the pace of a conversation. So where your first word would be, put a breath in its place. And what's that going to do is keep your analytical side engaged into where you do not allow yourself emotionally to get emotionally flooded. And the second benefit is neither does the other person because now you are also injecting the time and forcing them to slow down.
What about tonality, specifically raising your voice for assertion or lowering it almost to get them to lean in to pay attention? Is that any part of your belief system and influence or persuasion in a conversation?
Yeah, the idea is you want to lower your voice. I'm not talking really low. It's just you want to make sure it's always a downward inflection when you want to make statements that are foundational statements, that are concrete statements, that are this is my value or my boundary. When you have an upward inflection, it makes it sound like you're always asking a question. Like if I was gonna ask you, say, pass the salt, I wouldn't say, "Can you pass the salt?" As if like I doubt your ability to do it, or as if you don't know what salt is. It's the downward inflection. Can you pass the salt? So you want to make sure that you have a lower register instead of something that's really high. Same thing for like music. You take, for example, if you are always listening to fast-paced music, it encourages aggravation. It encourages anxiety to some extent. Trust me, I like all kinds of music, but my point is, if you start to versus if you listen to something that's more easy listening, it will slow down your brain waves. It slows down your entire feeling of how you're reacting. So when you are able to use a voice that is lower in tone, it sounds a lot more in control. There's a difference if I were to say, for example, "I already told you I'm not gonna do that," versus, "I already told you I'm not going to do that." Like, one sounds like it's grasping for control, and it's not in control. The other says, "I am fully in control of this moment."
Bro, you made me just think of my dad. My dad was a yeller when I was a young man. So he used his voice the worst possible way, right? Aggravation, stress, anxiety. He could take a situation that was a 2 and make it a 22 in like a second. However, as my dad got older, one of the things I noticed about my father, when I had a major life problem, like a big, big one, like one of those once every 8 or 9 years, I'm in big trouble type things. And I would call my dad, he would slow down the conversation. His voice would get deeper. And there was this, just his pacing and tonality calmed me down multiple notches. So much so that to this day, my father's passed away, that I have imaginary conversations with my dad when I'm under stress, where I am listening and mirroring that specific tonality of his, where he slowed it down and calmed it down and gave me a sense of peace about the conversation, to the extent that it was so influential on me that I will have these conversations with him even though he's not here, because it calms me down. That's how powerful what you're, it's how powerful what you're suggesting is. That when your children come to you under stress or in trouble, I've worked so hard in those specific moments of just listening to them
Mm,
and slowing it down a little bit, getting
yeah.
a little deeper in my register. Go ahead, you were gonna say.
No, I was gonna say you're spot on, and I love
Mm.
that. I think that is so. I mean, he was your that was the anchor in the conversation. I find that same way with the kids. Like we never, for the parents that are listening, you never, you always want to be the person that your kids run to for help. When they make the mistakes, and if you always yell at them and raise your voice, they're not going to come to you. But when you can be a safe space and say slowly, thank you for coming to me with this. That's gonna just encourage that dialogue. The slowing down is, there's a lot of wisdom in that.
There is, brother. Well, since we're talking about kids, let's stay on one little topic. What if you're interacting with someone who's behaving like a kid? Meaning you're interacting with somebody who's emotionally immature.
Yeah.
And now you got to have a grown-up conversation with this person that you know is emotionally immature. And every time the conversation gets a little bit more stressed, their maturity level drops even further. What are some of your thoughts in dealing with someone like, because we've all got those people around us, we may even love them, their maturity level to have a productive conversation is not always matching what we would like it to be. What do we do with them?
Right. Well, let's first set out that you have to choose whether or not you wanna have that conversation with that person, if that's the person to have the conversation with. Because there's all kinds of different types. In my view, you need to be very clear about, I'm gonna use the word boundaries, but not in a woo-woo kinda way. I'm using it in the terms of gatekeeping your peace of mind, meaning you're gonna use words that establish signal boundaries, like what you
Mm.
accept, what you allow. Those are the 2 big ones. So if I were going to say, "I don't accept the way you're talking to me right now," versus, "You can't speak to me that way." Like, there is one says, if I say, "You can't speak to me that way," to somebody who's emotionally immature, all they're gonna do is go, "Well, yes, I can." Like, they're not going to see behind the words. But if you, instead of beginning with you see how if I say, "You can't speak to me that way," it's like they have a remote control and they're pushing my buttons, and I'm saying, "You can't press that button," but I gave them the remote. Instead, it's you want to have this idea of giving them a manual saying, "Hey, look, if you turn to page 76, paragraph 2, you'll see I don't respond to that tone." Like, that's the kind of power that you'll be able to have when you use words like accept or allow. It's saying, I don't allow people to speak to me that way. I don't allow people to yell at me. I don't allow people to disrespect me. Like, there is a sense of control that you're going to feel and a sense of confidence you're going to gain when you stop giving remote controls and start giving out manuals for how they are going to be able to speak with you. That if we're going to engage in this conversation, this is what them's the breaks. These are the rules. This is how we're going to go through that instead of going, oh, I got to deal with this person. No, you don't got to deal with them. They have to deal with you.
If you enjoyed that clip and want to see the rest of the conversation, you can click right here. Or if you want to see the latest episode of the Jefferson Fisher podcast, click right here, and I'll meet you there.